All right, welcome to another episode of Post-Game Live Chat, Talkin Ball with Leonard. If you notice, I am in my house at the moment. Daily news with some budget decisions with the Giants, playing out the string and out of it. Unfortunately, not at the stadium for this game. However, will not prevent me from bringing you the same analysis and insight, working the phones, working the sources, watching the game with you guys. And I have all the information, analysis, and answers that you are looking for, as always. I'm going to start with Dan O'Brien, who says, "Hey, Pat, do you think it would have been beneficial to play Taylor?" So Dan asking right off the bat whether it would have been better to play Tyrod Taylor rather than Tommy DeVito in this 24-6 beatdown that the Giants just suffered in New Orleans. Dan, I think that's a good question. Before the Green Bay game, I thought the Giants made the wrong call in telling Tyrod Taylor that they were going with Tommy DeVito, even though he was healthy and ready to play. DeVito obviously made some plays in the second half of the Green Bay game. They win that game. The good feelings keep riding. And at that point where you're winning a third straight game and you beat a real team, like not just Washington and New England, but you beat the Green Bay Packers, who had been riding well at that point, and the defense was still forcing turnovers. So at that point, I thought you had to keep going with DeVito into New Orleans. Now, that said, I do think, Dan, that based on the way this game was going, especially with DeVito going out, getting checked for the concussion, and then the way that the game flipped, especially in the third quarter, with the Giants getting outgained something like 140-2 or something like that in yards by the Saints. I did think there was a juncture in the third quarter where Tyrod Taylor should have entered the game, and they should have at least looked for a way to supercharge an offense that before that last drive, like they had like 73 yards in the last drive. They had about 128 or something like that yards going into that last meaningless drive of the game. So my answer is, were you going to start Tyrod in this game after what happened last week? No, but did he deserve to come into this game more so than just those couple snaps at the end of the second quarter when DeVito was getting checked for the concussion? Yes, I agree with you there. Absolutely. Definitely agree with you on that one. So thanks for that question. The interesting part of it, though, is that Daboll says that DeVito is definitely going to be the starter next week as well in the Christmas game against the Eagles. And here's my read on that, Dan, is I think, frankly, that when you tell Tyrod Taylor that you're going with DeVito over him at that point, no one knows what was said in that room. But judging from Tyrod's reaction, I definitely think, or my feeling was, if you're Tyrod at that point, it's like, listen, I'll be ready to go in if you guys need me. But, does Daboll really have a choice right now? Like, what's he going to do? Bench Tommy DeVito for Tyrod Taylor, who he already told essentially, we don't believe in you because we believe more in Tommy DeVito than you. And, you get the message if you're Tyrod Taylor that he's not going to be part of this team from here on out anyway. So are you really going back to him? Are you having that conversation? We're going back to you when now the season is over. You already proved you were going to play the younger guy ahead of the better quarterback with the season on the line. And yes, you had some momentum going, but that, of course, was being driven by the defense. And now that that's over, you got to stick with the young guy at this point. Tell you guys quickly about Bet Online, who sponsors us. All major sports are in action this week with the college football playoffs ready to kick off. Bet Online is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, NHL games this season. Head to the website today to get in on the action. See the updated odds for the week. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Let's get to Hunter Keller. Hunter, what's up? Good early evening. From the looks of it, you say, I'm glad they had the game blacked out here in New Hampshire. Oh, yeah, the Saints blacked it out for you, even if you were watching. This is a crazy stat. So listen to this stat. According to NFL Next Gen Stats, the Chiefs defense had 26 individual player pressures on Tommy DeVito. So if you look at NFL Next Gen Stats, it tells you how many pressures a team generates as a team, and then also individual player pressures. So the Saints out-pressured the Giants' defensive line total. So that means like one pressure in this stat is a play where the quarterback was pressured. So there were 16 plays Tommy DeVito was pressured versus 7 plays that Derek Carr was pressured. But the Saints had 26 individual player pressures, within those 16. So that could be like a certain play where 2 or 3 guys were in on DeVito, which was happening a lot. He was not able to escape. Cam Jordan, the defensive lineman, defensive end for the Saints, was actually kind of spying and staying at home and not always rushing after DeVito as much as trying to keep him and making sure he stayed in the pocket. And then they were blitzing and running stunts up the middle and essentially taking away the lanes that soft Joe Barry Packers defense allowed Tommy DeVito to escape through for 70 yards in that game. So with Demario Davis and this defensive line just wrecking the Giants offensive line, this was a pathetic offensive performance, one of many pathetic offensive performances by the Giants this season. And of course, their magical ride comes to an end, Hunter. So yeah, don't feel upset that you did not take this one in with your eyes or in person. Joel says tough loss. Yeah, no doubt. But, not surprising. I think the magic was happening and now it's over. And also, like I said, Washington and New England, those two teams stink. The Patriots game, winning that game was fortunate. Beating Washington was fortunate. It was all on the backs of the defense. As Bobby Okereke said after this game, and listen, the Giants defense, they couldn't do it forever. They were carrying this team. They'd forced 12 turnovers in their 3-game winning streak. None in this game. Like I said, not enough pressure on Derek Carr, who had a monster performance. And I think what's really telling and the thing that's concerning to me just in general from this game, only 2 quarterback hits on Derek Carr and none of them by a defensive lineman. One by Bobby Okereke and one by Jason Pinnock, the safety. Not a great game for the Giants defensive line. Rushing forward, Derek Carr just tore them apart. They got nowhere near him. Bobby's quote was, defensively, we've been talking all week about embracing the challenge. And really, if we want to put our team in position to win, it's got to be on us, meaning the defense. Executing, creating turnovers, and getting that momentum swing. We got to do a better job from that standpoint. But of course, difficult to live that way when it's on the defense or not, or nothing at all. Hunter says it looked like the Saints absolutely targeted Adoree in the passing game big time. They did go after Adoree. Adoree Jackson obviously has been targeted on some key plays, some key big plays this season, none bigger than in the Jets game at the end with that pass interference in overtime. But I do also think, as much as the coverage was not favorable at times, it looked to me, now I was watching on the broadcast, looked to me like they played more zone than they usually do, which, if you're going to play zone like that and you're going to send 50% of the time rushing at the quarterback, you need to win some one-on-one battles on the interior. And, Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, et cetera, like that front just wasn't getting there. And, those are the guys you need to create those pressures. And I do think that while the coverage was bad in some key moments, I also think that the lack of pressure got Derek Carr comfortable and allowed him to operate and just kind of hit guys at will, gave him time to find people, gave them time to run their routes, find seams, find openings in that zone. Joel says, I guess we can talk draft now. Oh, we've been able to talk draft for a while, Joel. There's no doubt about it. Unfortunately, based on this season. Joel says, offensive line had a very bad day today, especially Justin Pugh. Joel, I do agree. This was a very bad day for the offensive line. I think that, again, it's not sustainable. I mean, they're playing with an undrafted rookie quarterback. This is a limited offense. And yes, the interior of their line was a problem in this game. I don't think anybody on the offensive line would tell you they played well, but especially all three on the interior, Justin Pugh, John Michael Schmitz, Ben Bredesen. The interior really got bludgeoned today. Ended up resulting at one point in Ben Bredesen holding his own as he got pushed back and accidentally stepping on Tommy DeVito's left ankle. DeVito obviously played through the concussion evaluation and the left ankle injury, really took a beating, 7 sacks. Of course, no sacks in the last game against Green Bay, but like I said, with the rush lanes cleaned up, it was essentially back to the way it's been with DeVito at quarterback. All the games prior to that was just constant sacks and the defense winning them games. So as much as this was a fun story for the Giants and for football in general, I have not been, in my opinion, I have been trying to look at this in a reasonable, level-headed way. and noting that while DeVito did impress against the Packers for sure and has conducted himself well, let's not make this something else than what it is. This is a disappointing season where it's not a good thing that Tommy DeVito is in the lineup. Now, it's a fun story. It's a fun local story. But the way that this Giants season has deteriorated, super frustrating. And also, it shouldn't be surprising at this result in this game based on what they're putting on the field right now. Jim says, Pat, as more defensive coordinators, especially the top guys, get more film of DeVito, the more likely he gets shut down. Chances of a third string quarterback, especially on this team, is slim. Jim, agree with you. Guys, these have been great questions. We're going to keep going. Thanks as always for joining me. These Talkin Ball lives have really taken off. I love doing them. I love how much engagement we get on here and the intelligent questions you guys ask. Remember, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker to get your comment elevated to the front of the line. I will answer it and address it immediately. It's a great way to support the community we have going here. A lot more offerings coming at the website, on YouTube, and also from me and my coverage of the Giants and the NFL. So stay tuned. Again, sponsored by Bet Online and also by Estate 98 Coffee and Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador, dating back to 1798. Makes a quick coffee, whether it's iced or hot. Also great for mixing alcoholic drinks. I'm surprised, actually, I didn't remember to go get my screwball before I started this, but because, usually I guess I do those on the Thursdays on the midweek chats. But like I said, screwball's got to get on board officially first. We got to do that. All right, back to the questions. Giants Blue-Blooded says, why did it feel like every phase wasn't ready to play today? Early drops, offensive line, defense, lack of pressure. It was bad from start to finish. Yeah, I agree, Blue Blood. DeVito made some throws early where we had a Jalen Hyatt drop. We had a Darius Slayton drop. Late, you had Eric Gray dropping one on a fourth down and turn it over for good to the Saints. You're right. Not enough, good enough. I think defensively, I just saw guys not winning up front. I think the offensive and defensive lines both got crushed today by the Saints. The Saints were physical, fired up, and ready. And, this is one thing I would say, Blue-Blooded, is, again, not to take anything away from the Giants winning their recent games, but this is a conversation I've had with a lot of people recently. The barometer for success for a Giant team can't be we barely beat the terrible Commanders and the terrible Patriots, especially simply with our defense playing out of their minds and forcing turnovers all over the place. And that became the barometer for something exciting and people saying, hey, can the Giants make the playoffs? And look at what they've turned into. No. This season, they are a bad team. They have a lot of guys who fight hard, who play with pride. There's a lot to like about certain individuals. You have to love, obviously, that DeVito handled himself the way he did. But, outside of the second half of the Green Bay game, DeVito did not play a certain way to change the dynamic of this team as far as its on-field X's and O's football, what they were going to accomplish. Now, Blue-Blooded, I agree with you that it was alarming how, like, top to bottom, they weren't ready for this game. I mean, I agree with you there, but also, and I hate to say it, but it just doesn't surprise me based on how this season is going. And frankly, I think that I'm very interested to see the way that this season ends these final 3 weeks, with all the dysfunction internally, the tension with the staff. Of course, everybody was kind of, putting their heads down and focusing on the work and on the preparations for their games and essentially trying to put their best forward probably for their next job. But, a loss like this obviously continues to kind of bubble up those types of feelings, those types of conversations, and who knows where this goes based on all the things that have been aired out so far publicly. I'm interested to see that. Hunter asks, have we officially been eliminated from playoffs? Or are we mathematically still in it? I know we won't. I guess you're saying I know we won't know. So the Giants are not officially eliminated from the playoffs at the moment, but it's an inevitability at this point. Even if they had won out by beating the Saints, the Eagles twice, and the Rams, they still would have needed a lot of help. So that's even if they had won all 4 of their remaining games and finished 9-8. So now that they lose to the Saints, you lose that game, and let's take a look at I don't think the standings are updated, but I think the Bucks won today as well, right? Am I right about that? And so there's just there's just too many teams right now that because the NFL is pretty mediocre this season, right? Or flat out bad, depending on how you look at it. And so there's just too many teams there in the mix. And the Giants, I mean, let's face it, they have barely beaten the Eagles ever in the last 5 years or so. So I know the Eagles are reeling. How about that Jay Glazer report? Matt Patricia essentially becoming their new defensive coordinator this late. I mean, what a mess that is. But the Eagles are still way more talented than the Giants, and the Giants have a hard time there. And then the Rams are a team that nobody wants to play right now, frankly. So they have a lot of talent, a really good quarterback, right? So if Derek Carr can do that to the Giants, just think what Matthew Stafford can do. So it'll happen. And like Darren Waller essentially kind of nodded his head, said, yeah, it's tough to swallow. Like we still got to put our best foot forward, but everybody knows. Hunter says, do you have any idea? Sorry. Jim Osborne says, realistically, how far in seasons do you believe we are away from a division title? It doesn't feel close to me. Maybe 1 or 2 seasons. Doesn't feel close at all to me, Jim. I do think that the Eagles' sudden, and by sudden, I mean, like kind of how it's accelerated in the middle of this season, their regression, especially on defense, is something that if you're a Giants fan, you say, finally, man, the Eagles look like a team that's reeling a little bit, right? Because even if the Giants have felt like they were on a run, they still can't beat them. Unfortunately, the Cowboys are loaded with talent and rolling, and they beat the Giants, knock them out of the building every time they play. So that's disappointing. The other thing is, Jim, now who knows whether they'll be able to stop being dysfunctional, but the Washington Commanders, now that they have new ownership, they're going to turn over their coaching staff. You just can't count on that team being bad forever, right? I mean, they're actually pretty talented, to be honest with you, the Washington Commanders. They're just poorly coached. So I think and the poorly run organization. So plus the Giants' uncertainty at quarterback, Daniel Jones, the neck history, I think you still have to talk about the Giants drafting a quarterback right now, in my opinion. And who said it earlier? Was it Jim who said that, DeVito still looks like a third stringer? Agree. So I still think whatever this run was, I still think you're looking at the Giants, pursuing and likely drafting a quarterback when it comes down to it in April, based on how this is going to finish. And Jim, I think my answer to you is winning the division. I'm not confident it's going to happen anytime soon. 4 years, 5 years, till they are there. I really do think people are completely under. No one really understands how much turnover is going to happen once the season ends, and how much this is all going to go up in flames, and how much uncertainty there's going to be about what this operation looks like, what the Giants organization looks like, and how they're going to be able to put this together next season, what the team's going to be, and all of that. There's just going to be so much. It's going to get busier when the off season starts and when the season ends. All right, let's see. Hunter says, do you know how Waller felt after today? Seemed like he felt okay. 4 catches for 40 yards. I think he had 30 of them on 1 catch. Believe he had his snaps managed significantly. Let's actually go to the participation. Waller had 26 snaps, so almost 50% of the offensive snaps, which is actually more than he told us before the game he thought he was going to get. So at least that's encouraging. And yeah, he didn't report feeling anything negative after the game. Randy Bullock, Brian Dable didn't have an update. Pulls a hamstring, not good on his kicking leg. They do have Cade York, who they, had on the active roster, now in the practice squad. So my guess is that it would be Cade York kicking on Christmas Day in Philadelphia. And then Jamie, didn't see how he got hurt. I think Jamie Gilland might have gotten banged up on the roughing the punter on the Giants' first possession. That's what's crazy about this too. The Giants scored 6 points in this game, and both field goals came on drives that were aided by Saints penalties. That one was the roughing the punter, kept that one alive on the first drive of the game. And then you had that ridiculous call on Alante Taylor on a legal tackle against Daniel Bellinger, unnecessary roughness. Looked to me the way Jamie kind of gutted through and finished that game that it's something he can manage, but we will see. Dan O'Brien says, thanks for answering. You got it, Dan. Thanks for joining, my man. He says, Pat, who do you think the starter is next weekend and going forward? I just think it's DeVito at this point. I think that when you tell Tyrod Taylor that you think Tommy DeVito gives you a better chance to win, that you're sending the message to him that that's how you feel for the rest of the season. You can't just say that for 1 week. And Tyrod was ready to come in this game, but that's a good question, though. I mean, I guess, listen, the players have spoken about how, hey, we're going to ride with whatever decision they make. But this was pretty pathetic from the offense today. To me, if you're trying to put a better offense on the field, you put Tyrod Taylor on the field. You also saw DeVito get pretty banged up in this game. But the fact that Dable is able to say right away after a game where DeVito gets banged up and they have 193 yards of offense, 73 come on a last meaningless drive, that he's able to say right then and there that DeVito is going to be the quarterback next week tells you all you need to know about the way they are playing out this season. Really just a pathetic season from the Giants and from their leadership, the team they've assembled here. Michael W. says it would also help to have a better wide receiver. We need a number one. Ours are average at best. We need Jamar Chase and a quarterback. The Giants do need a number one wide receiver. This is something I always say about the Giants, and it's something that a lot of people in the league talk about too with them and teams that aren't as talented top to bottom on their roster. You can have good players on a roster, but if they are asked to do more than what they should be on a depth chart, then they get exposed. So, for example, like Micah McFadden has had a pretty good year as the number 2 linebacker now that they have acquired Bobby Okereke. If they didn't have Okereke and you're asking McFadden to be the number 1 Mike and to step into that role and be that tackling machine and that leader of the defense guy, is he ready for that? Is he capable of that? Right. And so the Giants have been a team, and they still are a team in different positions. You look at offensive line, right? You look at, wide receiver. You look at, like you said, you could argue even quarterback and on and on. These are bad teams don't have those elite players in certain positions that allow you to slot your 1A guys in 1A spots, your B guys in B spots. If you have a B guy and you're asking him to be an A receiver, eventually it's going to catch up to you, right? And so I think that's a really good point, Michael. Jay Fed says, embarrassing that Carr diced up the Giants defense. Yes, it is. I mean, there is so little belief in the Saints. It's just not a lot of stuff going on with them that's positive. Ryan Ramchek's their tackle was out on the offensive line today. Chris Olave, their best receiver, was out. They benched Alvin Kamara for the first drive of this game. None of it mattered. None of it mattered. They kicked the Giants' butt. So if Bill Belichick was to be gone, would the Giants talk to him to see if he would like the head coaching job, even with Daboll there, or would they pass him over? I don't think – listen, would Belichick have that conversation? Maybe. I do think that Belichick needs to be in a place where they are going to let him make the calls. And the Giants are obviously well known for being an operation that does not give you the complete keys to what you're doing. Joe Shane has gotten more of the keys than most people recently, but it's still an organization that has a reputation for, whether it's meddling or whether it's essentially too many cooks in the kitchen in certain situations and not essentially being able to run the operation 100% the way you want. You look at the Jason Garrett offensive coordinator hire under Joe Judge, things like that. So, I think things would have to change in that regard for Bill Belichick to be interested in coming back here, even though the Giants mean a lot to him. I do think, though, Hunter, you're on the right track talking about what happens with Daboll. If they lose Kafka, McGahee, Martindale at the end of the season, does Daboll stay? Does he go to Buffalo? Does McDermott get fired in Buffalo and Daboll take that job? Does Daboll, find a better landing spot somewhere else? Does he need to find a landing spot? Does he want to stay and continue to develop, quarterbacks and this team with the Giants in this program? We'll see. But I do think the turnover that you're looking at coming after the season, this kind of promised upheaval of the Giants team, I think you're looking at a lot of questions about where this would go. Okay, let's see. Dan says, who do you think our coach and our starting quarterback will be next year? Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's possible that the week one starter is Daniel Jones, with the rookie, being groomed to start when he's ready. But I do think nowadays, when you draft a guy in the top 10, like, your job's to get him ready to play. If Dable's here, I could certainly see the Giants trying to sell the Daniel Jones playing early, grooming the rookie, and getting the kid ready to play whenever he is plan. You know, I guess either one of those things is a possibility, Jones or the quarterback they draft. And then who should the coach be? That's a tough question. I guess I'm just not 100% sure it's going to be Brian Dable based on what's coming down the pike, but we will see about that. I'll have more on that later. Let's see. Michael Sarasso says, yeah, they definitely got to get a QB even to learn first. And you see how badly they need O-line help big time. Oh, yeah. Nothing new there. And listen, Joe Shane took responsibility for putting Eric Gray on punt return, but he didn't take responsibility for building a horrendous offensive line. He should take responsibility for that, because all the calls in this game were, or in this season, I should say, this is Joe Shane's operation, and it just has been far, far, far from good enough. And the offensive line, the decisions early on, the Josh Azudu decision, the Marcus McKeith decision, all of these things, just not good enough, and on the personnel department and on the GM. And they have to get it right. All right, let's see. Giants Blue Blood says pass rushers last 3+ made a lot of guys look great. Last 3 games, I guess you mean. Made a lot of guys look great, Kayvon included. But to be great, you have to win one-on-ones consistently. Dex is getting doubled. Edges one-on-one need to get home. Absolutely. Yep. Kayvon has to be better than this. I do think this may end up being, I'll check back, this might end up being the 4th game this season Kayvon Thibodeau had 0 pressures in a game. Let me go back and see if he was credited with a pressure. Let's see. Pass rush, pressures. Kayvon Thibodeau not credited with a pressure. So I believe it's his 4th game without one. And you're right. Yeah, Azeez Ojulari on the other side. Those guys need to get home. Giants Blue Blood says, was Barkley limited? Lots of Breda on 3rd downs. Barkley comes out on a lot of 3rd downs. I know Jonathan Vilma always points it out and says, why is Saquon Barkley coming out on 3rd down? It does it all the time. I mean, he's not the best pass protector. And it's something that they've been doing for a while now under this regime, especially. I mean, it started under Joe Judge and it's continued with this regime. He doesn't pass block well. And, I'm sure there's other reasons behind it. I'm sure workload wise, etc. But I think they like Breda's ability to pass block and also his ability to catch passes as well. But that's nothing new, Giants Blue Blood. It's just, I think Vilma calls attention to it and says, why is this happening now? Why is this starting? And it's like, no, this has been happening. Guys, thank you for being here. Hit the like button right now if you haven't already. Hit those thumbs up buttons. All that love and sharing that and kind of hitting those buttons, the super chats, the super stickers, or even just pressing like helps YouTube kind of know that we got something going here, and it attracts more Giants fans to come in and join our content and listen in. It's much appreciated. I appreciate that. I see you guys, smashing those buttons now. Thank you. Hunter says, is Jamie under contract next year? If not, we better extend him. He's been one of our best players. Well, it's obviously, first of all, always disappointing when, if you ask about positives, one of the first things you mention is a punter. He is under contract for next year, signed a 2-year extension with the team. So he is under contract for 2024. And, he has developed this season better than any other year. I like Jamie a lot as a person, as a pro, as a worker. I do think that he's been a weapon for them this season. Jim says, how long is Waller's contract? What's his future with the Giants? His after catch yardage was non existent today. Yeah, definitely nothing explosive about Waller there. He did have a catch and run on his 30-yard grab. That was a nice play there by Waller. But unfortunately, Waller for now, right now, his contract goes through 2026. It is a contract that after next season, they can get out of with under 5 million of dead money, I believe. But his contract goes through 2026. Essentially, the real or the bulk of the money is through 2024. But definitely, Giants and Joe Shane took a flyer there. And so far, of course, injury-prone player dealing with a lot of injuries. I've enjoyed dealing with Waller and talking to him and working with him. But of course, the product on the field, not good enough. Of course, the offensive line, not good enough. Quarterback play, not good enough. On and on and on. The offense has been pathetic. Hunter says, where do you think Bill goes next year? I think Chargers would be best. Who, Belichick? Yeah, or Washington, obviously a storied franchise that lost its way. Maybe he helps get them back on track. But also, you got to think he wants to go somewhere that would be ready to win. I could even see him doing the media thing for a year and then jumping back into coaching after that if he doesn't think that there is a team out there that's ready to hire him, that's ready to win. Because listen, he's old enough and experienced enough and successful enough. Bill Belichick is not, Bill Belichick is not interested in, I wouldn't think, in going somewhere where you're doing a full rebuild. I mean, that's what the Patriots are right now, essentially. So that's what's interesting to me. I know Justin Herbert is in LA with the Chargers, but that team's not as good as people think. Like, I know Staley didn't do a good enough job and all that, but I also think that they're overrated talent-wise. I think that's part of the reason why Telesco got fired too. And so I do think Belichick, he has a lot of leverage here too. So he's not just going to take a job to take a job. Michael says, I think Dayball should call plays. He took over the offense for a stretch in the middle of the season. Didn't make much of a difference. Gave it back to Mike Kafka behind the scenes. And excuse me. I think, his job's to be the head coach of the team. Maybe next year he ends up being the play caller. If he's here and he's their head coach, maybe he does the Mike McCarthy thing and takes on the play calling full bore. I do think he's taken the play calling at times this season and he just won't admit it. Michael, I think just like Dan's question earlier about Tyrod Taylor and why not change the quarterback, I think everything's got to be on the table at this point for sure. But like I said, there's going to be a high turnover on the coaching staff. Hunter says, if we draft a quarterback high and Daniel is healthy, you play Daniel till the wheels fall off. If he struggles or we are terrible, then go to the rookie. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of where the contract forces your hand into. But, scary situation with his neck, with the injuries, with the offensive line they put in front of him. Is the rookie quarterback going to be any good or not? Those are not necessarily guaranteed, right? So all those things, questions in play. But, yeah, that's definitely an option. Quarterback first round, second round, O-line, and wide receiver, says Michael. It's, they need pass rush help. They need all those things on offense. It's just they need a lot. Hunter says, do they think Waller could get shipped out or shipped out to where? I mean, that's the one thing. Like, you're not going to just trade a guy who's injury prone, has a big contract, and hasn't been producing and staying on the field. So, it's going to be hard to do that. I do think he's here for next year. Cowboys are really struggling in Buffalo, Dak being contained. Yeah, the weather there, tough game, and Buffalo playing desperate right now. I do think the Cowboys will score some points in this game, but that's a tough place to play, tough place to go. Be interesting to see how that goes in that game. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for another Talkin Ball postgame live with the Giants and Saints. Of course, a disappointing result, disappointing season. Thanks for sticking with me through all of it. We will come back here, right, with more content. Stick with me here for the rest of the season and into the offseason. Like I said, it's going to be a fiery and newsy January, that's for sure. You can check my game story and my analysis of the Giants-Saints game, more of it on the Daily News website. Obviously, you can follow me on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at PL on NFL. and Twitter, PLeonardNYDN. This has been Pat Leonard on the Giants and Saints. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, and we will see you next time.